I'm going to introduce Paverplast to you. Paverplast comes in two sizes, a 1,000 gram as well as a 500 gram. For your Paverpol must-haves, this is the product. You must have, of course, the liquid, but this Paverplast is one of the core products that we do use, and I personally use this and mix it in with the Paverpol to create different textures, but at the same time I also use it as a sealant for the outdoors. Of course we use varnish with outdoor statues, but the Paverplast is one of the key products that is outstanding, especially for weatherproofing. So it's just a simple powder. And our ratio that we use, and I hear people ask this all the time, is 1:5. So 1 portion of the Paverplast to 5 portions of the Paverpol liquid. And that is your standard ratio as well as the mix. I'm just going to show you how to mix Paverpol with Paverplast. Now, the other thing that I should also mention is with the Paverplast, we also use it to create rose clay and to create a smoother texture on sculptures. But at the same time, we're able to use this combination to create textures that look something like this. Okay? And we can make it as smooth or as bumpy as we would want. But it's and that's just using the two products alone. To mix the Paverpol with the Paverplast, as I mentioned from before, what we do is it's a ratio of 1:5. So it's 1 portion of the Paverplast with 5 portions of the Paverpol. So I'm just going to mix some in here. And you're going to notice that it's a little bit on the lumpier side. Okay. It's a little bit on the lumpy side. And it's nothing more than just mixing it to look as if it's almost like a very thick yogurt, or I would say pancake batter. Okay. And one of the tips and tricks that I do have for the Paverpol Paverplast mix is that to actually leave it overnight. Because when you leave it overnight, what happens is it actually smooths out a little bit more, and any bumps and lumps that you might have in your mixture, they actually just disappear. And you will notice that the liquid itself becomes just a little bit thicker. So we just mix it for a little while. I just want to show you, but you can probably see it's a little lumpy right now. But if you leave it overnight, it smooths out beautifully and it thickens, and it'll be a little bit easier to use. But we can use it right now if we want to. So I'm going to show you two techniques. One is on raw tin foil, which creates this type of technique, and the other one is on a smoother surface, which you'll be able to do some texturing. So what I have here is Paverpol and Paverplast mix, and this is the Paverplast. And the mixture again is 1:5 of the liquid Paverpol. So 1 portion of the Paverplast to 5 portions of the Paverpol. And then you need to mix well. Okay, so this is what the mixture looks like. I've already prepared some raw tin foil. Okay, and it's just something very simple that I'm just going to show you. And it's nothing more than, we're just going to make a little candle holder. Okay, so all we do is we take the mixture of the Paverpol Paverplast, and we just apply it on. Okay. A nice thick layer. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I do just want to show you a little bit of how it does adhere to it. And the Paverplast really helps with the Paverpol to stick onto the tin foil. And it's so very, very simple. So if you're able to just play with tin foil and you can just make anything you want, this is a great project for the kids. The product itself is ACMI certified, so it's very safe. And at the same time, it's very easy to use. So this is all we do with it. Just add Paverpol, Paverplast mix. Nice and thick. And then we just wait for it to dry. And then once it dries, you can also add Paver color to it, which is what we've done with the sample piece that I have here. We just rub the color into it, and then it creates that wonderful texture. Okay, so we just wait for this to dry, and we go from there. Just a little sample piece. The next technique I'm just going to show you is with Paverpol and Paverplast again. Just the texture that you're able to do with just those two products combined together. Now this is just a little bird that I had sculpted out, okay? But you don't necessarily have to create a sculpture. So in the efforts to reduce, reuse, and recycle, what I've done is I'm just going to demonstrate on a glass bottle. Now, a lot of us have glass bottles at home, etc., that that we wonder, what are we going to do with it? So I'm just going to take a simple bottle like this, okay, and I have this is a coffee jar, and I've already taped it in the back. I'm just going to put a few more pieces of tape on it. This is just simple masking tape, and I'm only going to demo just half of it, but you just add masking tape to it, okay, where you want to do the texture, and very, very simple to do, okay? Just masking tape everything on a smooth surface. The first step is that we're just going to add Paverpol, okay? This is just straight Paverpol. There's no Paverplast in it, so we're just going to add some Paverpol to this. We just paint it over. Now you can also do this for sculptures. So this little bird was sculpted using tin foil, styrofoam, and that's it, with masking tape. Okay, and with the masking tape, I call it creating a smooth surface. So this is already a smooth surface. The Paverpol can actually stick to the glass, but I decided to add the masking tape to it, just to make make sure that everything is going to adhere. Okay, but this is also what you would do for a sculpture, like the bird. Okay, and then we just add the Paverpol to this, and we wait for it to dry. So this is step one of the texture. So we're going to continue on with the texture. So what I've done thus far is I've taken a coffee jar and I've just added pure Paverpol on top of it. Just using pure Paverpol, no Paverpol mix. This is the first step. Second step is with the Paverpol Paverplast mix of the 1:5 ratio of Paverplast to Paverpol, I'm just going to add another layer. Okay. What this does is it just seals it a little bit more, especially if you're going to be sculpting using tin foil. And the masking tape just creates a smoother surface on your statue or any object with the tin foil, and then it just gives it an extra layer of security, because we are going to be texturing it, and when we're texturing it, you'll see why it's very important to make sure that there's a layer there so that you actually don't break through into the tin foil. So this is our second step, and all I've done is I've added a coating of Paverpol and Paverplast to it, and I'm just going to wait for this to harden and dry before we put on our final coat where we're actually going to start texturing. For those of you who are a little impatient waiting for this to dry, what I did do is I took a hair dryer just to speed up the process a little bit more, and I put it on low, and I made sure I put it on cool. Okay, don't put it on high heat. It's just going to extend the time, the drying time. So my second step is I've put on the Paverpol Paverplast mix, and I don't know if you can all see this, but I did use a hairdryer to make the drying process, or to speed up the drying process a little bit, and you might be able to see how it looks a little bit more glossy, and you can tell by the colors that it's starting to dry a little bit more. Okay, and this is one of the beauties of working with the Paverpol Paverplast mix, because when we actually put this layer onto our statues, for example, it's not only, you know, a nice adhesive and gives this glossy, smooth look, but it's also that extra barrier for weatherproofing. And one of the things that I do for my outdoor statues is I always put on a coat of Paverpol Paverplast before I add any colors to it, because I find it to be I'm going to call it my sealant, because it works best for me that way when I put this extra sealant. And my statues have been outside in the sleets, hail, sun, snow, you name it, it's gone through it all. Especially up in Canada, we have 4 seasons of everything plus a few more. So for us, it's really, really critical to get this extra sealant. So my next and final step is I am going to add on a third coat of a Paverpol Paverplast mix, except this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding more Paverplast to it, and I want a really nice thick layer, because this nice thick layer is going to give me that opportunity to do more texturing. So I'm just adding it in and stirring it in, and I'm just checking to see what it looks like. So let me just repeat what the first step was. The first step was we just put the Paverpol on. Second step is we did the Paverpol Paverplast mix, which is again the 1:5 ratio of Paverplast to Paverpol. Now I am just going to add a very thick coating of the Paverpol Paverplast mix. So I did add in a little extra Paverplast, as you saw. So this is kind of the mixture, very, very thick batter, like, okay? And let's add it to our jar. Very, very simple. Add a nice thick layer to it. Now, one of the tips and tricks to this is that we do this in sections. Although it's a whole jar front right now, I like to do it in sections, because it gives me a little bit more control over the texturing. And sometimes this mixture can dry very quickly. So, but let's just cover the whole thing like this to start off with. And we're just going to wait a little bit for it to dry. Now, tip and trick again, I don't use a hairdryer for this, but you can, and I normally just let it sit, and I just wait. So it's pretty thick, and already when I'm touching it like this, you can already see a little bit of the texturing in it. So once we wait for it to dry a little bit more, I'm just going to take a skewer to it, and then what I'm going to do is show you different techniques or different patterns that you can possibly do. Okay, so we'll just wait for it to dry a little bit more, but we need to make sure it stays wet so we can work with it. But I'm just going to wait for it to dry just a little bit. Okay, so now this is drying, and it's gotten to the point where I'm going to be able to add some texture to it. And so this is the third layer with a thicker combination of Paverpol and Paverplast. Okay, so what I do is, I've already started playing with it, is you take something like a skewer, or what I currently have right here is just a knitting needle, and you just start texturing. And this is all we do to add texture to it. And when the magic really happens is when this dries. When this dries, what happens is you then will see what it looks like with dry brushing. But this is nothing more than just texturing, just like this. It's almost like working and playing with frosting. And it's just what can you play with? And as it dries more and more, you're going to get more and more texture with it. Now, if you like just straight lines, I'm just going to do some straight lines here. You can do this. Okay, and maybe that's what we'll do. We'll do half of it with kind of straight lines like this. And we'll do the other half with a little bit more texture. Little strokes, just like this. And then once I dry brush it, then you can have a look to see what it actually looks like with all this texture and why the bird, or how that bird actually looks the way it does. So play with this to your heart's content. Now, another tip and trick is that if all of a sudden you find one area too dry and you can't get the texture in, what you do is you just add a little bit more of the Paverplast mixture to that one little area. Just wait for it to dry a little bit, and then you start all over again. I know that right now you're looking at it and go, yeah, I see some technique in the texture and everything else. But once we dry brush it, then I can show you a little bit more in terms of what it really can look like. Okay, I think I'm happy with it. I think this is what I'm going to do and just leave, and I'll wait for it to dry completely before I dry brush it. Okay. Yeah, doing some little swirls here. Okay, so what I've done here is I've done some straight lines, and then I've done some little curls here. But depending on how much you want it to dry, because if I left it earlier and it was still a little bit more wet, I would get a different technique look. But this is what I'm playing with, and this is what I'm working with. And once we dry brush it, it will really pop out, and you'll be able to see the texture will be something probably similar to this. So we're working on the third stage now. So I put a third coat of Paverpol and Paverplast on. It was a much thicker base there. And what we have done is we've waited for it to dry. And now we're actually going to paint. And you can see the texture. And with the Paverpol and Paverplast, you can probably see there's a little bit of a gloss and shine to it. And it's a much smoother texture. Okay. And again, this is a recycled coffee bottle. All right, let's start painting. So what I am going to paint with today is Paver paint. Now, Paver paint, I believe there are 17 colors, and this is a fairly new product from Paverpol. And a little goes a long way, and most of these paints are metallic. So I think this will be a great demonstration of using the Paver paint, which also has UV protection, and the colors are really, really intense. So let's try a little bit of, and this is, let's see what color we have here. This is the green, but I can't pronounce it. It's Fialto, I think it's what it's called. And we're just going to dry brush this. Okay, so I'm just going to take a little bit of the green. I'm going to use something recycled. Okay, this is really simple. Everybody has these. You buy some meat or you buy some pastries at the grocery store, and it comes in these, and you're like, what can we do with it? So back to Paverpol, what we do is we recycle and we reuse. So this is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the green, not too much of it, and what we're just going to do is we're just going to dry brush this to give it a little bit of texture. So hopefully the texture is popping out. Let's see. you see a little bit of this? There you go. That's a little bit of the green, and we're just dry brushing it very lightly. Okay. And just add a little bit more to it. And I'll talk a little bit more about the texture once I show you. Okay. Then we're going to try the blue. You can probably see how much the blue is like a little goes such a long way. Okay. Now with dry brushing, we always try to go against the grain, but you can already see, this was the one where I just did the texturing, where I just did up and down, and these on the bottom, I just did a little bit of the swirl, and all I used was like a skewer, something with a pointed stick. And this is done on the third layer, because we did put 3 layers on, okay? And I'm also going to try the purple. So, hopefully you can see the 3 colors. Okay, we've done a green, we've done a blue, and we've done a purple. And this is how we textured using Paverpol and Paverplast. All we did was use 2 products. The 2 products we used was the Paverpol, and I used the Paverplast. So the first layer, we just used straight Paverpol. The second layer, we used Paverpol and Paverplast, and we waited for that to dry. And the last layer was a Paverpol and Paverplast, much thicker. We added a little bit more Paverplast so that we can actually create something that was almost like a frosting texture. Then we took the skewer, or in my case, a knitting needle, and we just waited for it to dry a little bit, and then we just added the texture to it. Pure texture, waited for that to dry completely, and then we dry brushed, and this is the effect. So you can easily do this with any recycled glass product. You can even work on tin foil with it. And we actually started playing around with the tin foil here, and we can actually use masking tape on top of it to create a smoother texture. But now, I mean, you can just finish the top if you wish, and literally, after you're completed, you will have yourself like a little vase. And that's how you do texture with Paverpol and Paverplast.